2025. It's a brand new year. It's a life hack series, and I'm glad you are with us. How many of you, if you're being honest, you can remember 1999 kicking into 2000, hunkered in a basement with non-perishable foods? That was us. We were stockpiled. I think my mom probably still has some of those cans of non-perishables. I remember thinking in 1999, cresting into 2000, man, 2025 is like so far away. We'll be living on Mars and driving flying cars, and 2040, like that's never going to be, we'll never see that. And then I got thinking this week, like I won't even be retired in 2040. And it felt like it was so far away. It was just this unimaginable time. We are in 2025. It's a unique season of life. And in the same spirit of honesty, I just want to ask a question as we start this year. And if you can say this honestly, I appreciate that. How many of you would be able to say, I'm good. Like, I'm where I want it to be. As 1999 crested into 2000, by the time I hit 2025, like, I'm where I wanted to be financially. I'm good where I wanted to be relationally. I'm good where I wanted to be spiritually. Like, I am actually really good. If that's you, I celebrate that with you. I do. I wonder if there's some of us that might say, man, like, I'm not where I wanted to be by now. I thought it would be different by 2025. I thought it'd be different by the time the years kept going. I thought relationally it would be healthier, or spiritually I would be healthier, or physically I would be healthier. I'm just not where I wanted to be. And I think some of us this morning would find ourselves in Camp A. Like, we're good. Like, it's good. I'm good. But I wonder if there's some of us that would find ourselves more in Camp B. I don't know if I'm good right now. Just not where I thought I would be. And I want to start this year, and I want to start this season, and I want to start this series with an encouragement. It's okay not to be okay. I remember the first time I heard that. Our counselor was talking to Kim and I, and he looked at me, and he looked at Kim. He's like, hey guys, just want you to let it, it's okay not to be okay. And I remember thinking right away, I'm like, of course you say that. Like, you're okay that I'm not okay, and you're okay if I stay unokay because you make the K off of me, right? Like, you make money off of me, so you're okay if I stay unokay. Now, that was not our counselor's posture. It never has been. He wants us to get healthy, and he wants us to get better and to continue to grow. But I remember hearing that for the first time, wrestling with that sentence as a dad, as a husband, as a pastor, as a human. Is it okay not to be okay? And really, this concept, this statement is where we're going to go today, and where we're going to go laying out the groundwork today, moving forward through this series. I want to give us some life hacks on sadness today. Some life hacks on hurts, and some life hacks on sorrow and disappointments, and remind you that it's okay not to be okay. Now, some of you are young enough, you're like, I get life hack, that makes sense. And some of you are maybe a bit more seasoned in life, and you're like, the last thing I hacked was a loogie in the shower this morning, and I don't want to do that again. Or the last thing I hacked was a tree in the woods to have firewood for my home. Like, I don't know what this life hack thing means. What does that mean? Let me tell you. A life hack very simply is this. It's a trick, a shortcut, a skill, or a method that increases productivity and increases efficiency in every area of your life. And I want you to understand something. When you get right spiritually, everything else trickles down and falls into place. It's how God designed it. It's how God wired it. It's how he designed you and wired you. So this life hack is going to be focusing on the spiritual side, and everything else is going to flow from it. And we'll talk about those in the weeks to come. A life hack. Some of us need to hack our spiritual lives, and everything else will fall into place. So, I'm going to stir up a little bit of controversy because I feel like it's a spiritual gift of mine. Kind of stir the pot a bit. When we talk about the greatest of, and if you talk about it in basketball, there's no debate. It's between these two. You can toss in Kobe, and you can toss in Wilt, and you can toss in Magic Johnson. But it comes down to who's the greatest. It's one of these two. If you're old school, it's Jordan. If you're new school, it's LeBron. But that's the GOAT. That's the greatest of all time. When it comes to football, there really isn't an argument when it comes to the greatest of all time. And you're welcome for me putting him in a Buccaneers jersey, not a Patriots jersey, because I'm a Buccaneers fan. True story. And you're like, but you're from Canada. If you want to know how I landed on the Buccaneers, I will tell you, but not online for it to be record because it's embarrassing. But I did pick them back in like 1996. That's how long I've been with the Buccaneers. He's the greatest of all time. It's not even close. But when it comes to music, this one's a little harder to define because there's so many genres and so many styles and so many pop kind of pop and country and R&B. You got all these different varieties. Who's the greatest of all time when it comes to music? Some are going to say it's Elvis. He's the king. That's why he's named the king. And others of you are going to say, well, it's got to be the Beatles. I mean, they revolutionized the music industry in America. They brought it over here, and they're iconic. And others are going to say, well, I don't know if it's them. It's got to be Michael. It's got to be Michael Jackson because he just changed music forever. Others of you might say, listen, regardless of their preferences, and they were way ahead of their time, and what Freddie Mercury could do with his voice. But rumor has it, it's Adele. See what I did there? If you know music, then you'll get it. If not, you'll be like, what, I don't understand. You'll catch up later. Arguably, you could say it's Taylor Swift. Now, you guys lump her or leave her, love her or hate her. It's up to you. She has changed the music industry. Listen to this. She has 50 Billboard Music Awards, the most ever. She has 40 AMA Awards, the most ever. She has 30 MTV Awards, the most ever. She has 25 iHeartRadio Music Awards, the most ever. She has 5 Grammy Albums of the Year, most ever. She's the first woman to be ever named 2 times, 2 different years, to the Times Person of the Year. She's the first entertainer to be named Person of the Year. And as of December 2023, she's 118 Guinness Book of World Records. Arguably, you could say she is the greatest musician. Now, you got to put a little R-E-S-P-E-C-T on Aretha. Billy Joel, his music library is rumored to be at $1 billion net value. So when it comes to music, there are so many different goats, if you will. I want to settle it, I want to declare it, and I want to make this statement. I'm going to tell you who the greatest musician is of all time. You ready? They have written more lyrics and songs and styles, genres, ballads, and artistic expressions than any other band and any other musician in the history of the world. They have penned lyrics of lament and regret and shame and sorrow and praise and thanksgiving and appreciation. They have written songs of confession and intervention and songs of forgiveness and mercy and wisdom and fear. This father-son duo has spanned 3,000 years of continued appreciation for their lyrical genius. It is King David and his son Solomon. If you want to read lyrics and read songs and read the penmanship, go to the book of Psalms and the book of Proverbs. Hands down, they are the greatest. It's like when you read the book of Psalms or you read the book of Proverbs, who these two gentlemen wrote those books, it's like they experienced every single thing that you and I have experienced in this life. And it makes zero sense to me because it was thousands of years ago. But I can read the book of Psalms and go, holy smokes, like how did he know I was feeling this? And how did he know that I was going to experience this? David wrote out of disappointment. David wrote out of hurt. David wrote out of frustration. He wrote out of concern and worry. He wrote out of fear. He was being hunted by a ruthless dictator named King Saul, literally trying to kill him, and he wrote about it. He wrote lyrics about it. They wrote from their failures and their successes. Some of us have some failures and some successes. They wrote from their shame and their repentance. They wrote from their surrender and their worries. They wrote some life hacks for us. Remember, a life hack is something that will help increase our productivity or our efficiency spiritually. And then all other areas and all other walks of life will fall into place. See, what I love about this greatest of all time duo is that they wrote with humility and vulnerability. David wrote about depression and grief and guilt, and he got honest with it. And I want to tell you as you jump into 2025, if you want to have the full life that Jesus promised, that John 10:10 life, you have to be honest with yourself first. It's okay not to be okay. It's okay if you find yourself jumping into a new year in Camp B. You want to be in Camp A, but you're not quite there yet. And we're going to work our way. We're going to try to begin to hack our way to Camp A. But some of us are living in Camp B. I remember a time in my life, it's really the only time that I can remember where I'm going to call it depression. It gripped me. I've always been the life of the party. In school, in college. And I remember just a season in life years ago where I didn't want to be around anybody. I would get invited to a party or get invited to dinner, and I would come up with every excuse why I couldn't go. And rightfully so, those people they stopped inviting me. I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't love myself. I didn't like myself. I didn't want to be around myself, so why would anybody else? And I remember thinking this. My wife and my kids would be better off without me. See, my wife knew I wasn't okay. My friends knew I wasn't okay. But until I got honest with myself and reminded myself, Dan, you're not okay, nothing was going to change. It's like I had a lethal dose of an absence of hope. Let me say that again. I was living with a lethal dose of an absence of hope. It was this emotionally draining winter. Everything felt dark, damp, and cold with no end in sight. The sun would come out for a minute and then bam, clouds, darkness, sadness. And some of you are like, you're talking exactly what I'm going through. Just want to say this, I get it. I've lived it. Some of you are like, I don't understand at all, but you probably know somebody who does. This teaching and this series is for them, for you to help bring them from Camp B into Camp A. This is for all of us. And David understood. He understood what we're going through. He understood the struggles and the worries and the pressures and the temptations. Listen to what he says over in Psalm 102. Lord, hear my prayer. God, would you listen to my plea? Don't turn away from me in my time of distress. Bend down and listen and answer me quickly when I call to you. Can I just tell you, I've prayed that. I have prayed that. God, I need you to listen, and I need you to listen fast. I need you to help now. My days disappear like smoke, and my bones burn like red-hot coals. My heart is sick, withered like grass, and I've lost my appetite. I don't resonate with that one very much, actually. Because of my groaning, I'm reduced to skin and bones. Don't resonate with that one. I'm like an owl in the desert, like a little owl in a far-off wilderness. But listen, I lie awake lonely as a solitary bird on the roof. If you put this to music, this is depressing. David gets it. David understands it. He knows what you're going through. This last sentence, I lie awake lonely as a solitary bird on the roof. What he's saying is, I lay awake and it doesn't feel like anybody hears me. It doesn't feel like anybody cares about me. It doesn't feel like anybody sees me. Listen, we have just come out of one of the most politically stressful times. And you might feel like a solitary, lonely bird on a roof. Throw in the financial instability, throw in some medical bills, family problems, racial tensions, and now flying drones. Man, it feels easy to feel alone. And part of me wonders, David, how do you do this? Because in one verse, he's saying, praise the Lord. Oh, thou praise him. He's kind, he's compassionate, he's gracious. He lifts me up. I love you, God, my God. You're so good. But from the depths of despair, I call to you. He's on this roller coaster. Read the Psalms. He's all over the charts. These are one chapter apart. He's saying, oh, you're so good. Where are you? I call to you. Pay attention, God. Oh, I love you. Pay attention to me. Like that's David in a nutshell. He understands exactly what you're going through. I'm counting on you, God. I have put my hope in you, and here's my condition to do that. I will put my hope in you, but you need to come through. Some of us are there right now. Oh, I love you, God. You're so good. You're so kind. Pay attention to me, God. I'm calling out to you, God. And without being blasphemous to David, because he was one of the only person that was called a man after God's own heart, David struggled with something. David struggled with negative self-talk. He says in Psalm 6, have compassion, I'm weak, I'm sick. How long before you restore me? He just gets negative with himself. And some of us are really good at this. Some of you, myself included, have a gift of negative self-talk. Let me give you a real life story of how good I am at this. Are you ready? 2 months ago, my wife has a gift of seeing a vision and seeing a project come to life, and she's really artistic and crafty, and she can do it. And right off the lobby out here in that little prayer nook was Kim's vision, Kim's dream, and she's helping kind of bring it together, and John Russell, who goes to the church, brings in a couple nail guns, and we're putting up the wood on the wall. Now, listen, I'm useless when it comes to this stuff, but I'm going to do it because I'm a man. I got to. And I grab the nail gun and I pull the trigger, and John's like, just so you know, you got to put it on the wood, and then it'll shoot. It's a Brad gun. I'm like, oh, okay. And we're going along, and everything's good. And then, here's what happened. We switched nail guns. We got out the big gun, and I pulled the trigger not knowing the difference, and a nail, it's like bouncing around in the prayer room. And I'm going to tell you very candidly, for the next 10 minutes, these were my thoughts. I am so stupid. Dan, how could you not know that that one would be different? It's bigger. It's more dangerous. You're an idiot. You could have shot your eye out. Even worse, you could have shot his eye out. Why do you even pretend you're not good at this? Leave it to the people who are gifted. Stop trying to be someone you're not, Dan. And for 10 minutes, I played in my head how stupid and pathetic I was to not know the difference between the size of the gun, the Brad gun, to pull the trigger or not. For 10 minutes, it went through my head. And I was telling myself, you're a waste. You're stupid. And what happened was I began to ruminate on it. And it played on repeat. I left the church and went home, and I thought about it that night. You're an idiot. Why would you do that? Some of us are really good at this. We have a gift. We have a talent. I'm not good enough. God doesn't care about me. God won't answer that prayer. He never has. He never will. I'm not worthy of his love. I made so many mistakes. I can't be forgiven. No one understands. I'm all alone. I'm a solitary bird on a roof. I'm weak. I'm broken. I'm a failure. I'm washed up. Things will never get better. There's no good in this world. Life sucks, and then you die. And you're good at it. And you have a lethal dose of an absence of hope. And here's what the son of the greatest duo said in Proverbs. Without hope, you're sick. Without hope, you're hurting. The absence of hope. Hope deferred. Hope down the road, but not with you. You have no hope now. It will make you heart sick. But what David does, and what I appreciate David, is he gets real and he gets vulnerable with himself and he gets honest with himself. I'm a failure. I'm a mess up. Oh God, where are me? Have compassion on me. But he doesn't stay stuck. Here's what he says. I'm going to look up to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord. My help comes from the maker of heaven and earth. He won't let me stumble. The one who watches over you will not slumber. And what David does, hear me, is he says, I'm going to get vulnerable with the truth about me and let the truth about God change me. It's okay not to be okay. And get honest and vulnerable about the truth about you. And then let the truth and the character and the goodness of God begin to change you from camp B into camp A. But you have to be truthful about yourself. You have to be honest with yourself. And maybe, for some of us, this is the time where we can begin to shift something within us as we learn and we read and we meditate and we ruminate not on the negatives, but on the scriptures. the book of Psalms and the book of Proverbs. If you're jumping into faith, or you're jumping into this journey this year spiritually, start in the book of Psalms or the book of Proverbs. In fact, in Proverbs, there's 31 chapters. There's 31 days in a month, right? Like, this is, God's sense of humor sometimes is just so kind. Like, hey, I'm just going to help you. Read a chapter a day in the book of Proverbs and watch what God stirs within your heart. See, when you begin to pray through and pray scripture, something does shift within our souls. And for the few minutes that we have left, I want to turn our attention, what I'm going to call arguably David's most famous writing is the 23rd Psalm. And this is what he says. I'm not even going to put it up there. I want you to if you're okay with it, just close your eyes and listen. This is from the NLT, the New Living Translation, the 23rd Psalm. It's pretty famous. You might recognize some of it. This is what David pens. The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. He lets me rest in green meadows. He leads me beside peaceful streams. He renews my strength, and he guides me along the right paths, bringing honor to his name. And when I walk through the darkest valley, because friends, you will. When I walk through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid, for you are close beside me. Your rod and your staff, they protect me, and your rod and your staff, they comfort me. God, you prepare a feast for me in the presence of my enemies, and you honor me by anointing my head with oil, and so my cup overflows with blessings. Surely your goodness and your unfailing love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will live forever in the house of the Lord. Your goodness follows me. Your unfailing love pursues me. That is who we serve. That is who we have relationship with. And I want to unpack this 23rd Psalm just real quick. Just a few things that he highlights. This is what he says. The Lord is my shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. David refers to himself here as a sheep. Now, this is a buzzword in culture today. You sheep. You're the blind following the blind. You need someone to tell you what to do. You need someone to guide you. You need someone to tell you what to do and where to go. And it's become this insult in our culture, and it's become slanderous. But I want to tell you, this is a spiritual compliment. To be a sheep. David says, I'm a sheep. The Lord's my shepherd. I'm in his protection. I'm in his care. Without him, I'm weak. Without him, I'm unable to provide my own protection and my own guidance. Listen, David is the same. This is the same David that killed the Goliath giant. And if anybody should be able to say, the Lord's cool, but I'm awesome too. The Lord's powerful, but look what I did. It's this guy. And he doesn't. He says, I'm weak and pathetic without you, Jesus. I need you. Lord, I need your guidance. I need your help. The Lord is my shepherd. Then he says, I lack nothing. Think about that. When you surrender to the Lord and you become the sheep and he becomes the shepherd, you will lack nothing. This is imagery in Psalm 23. That is so powerful. See, when I think about this, Psalm 23, he leads me into the meadows, the green meadows. In Western PA, we have beautiful, lush, green rolling hills. And the sheep and the cattle and all the livestock, they can graze and they can eat, and it's non-GMO and it's organic and it's beautiful and it's awesome. But David isn't writing to us in Western Pennsylvania. David is writing in Israel where it's dry and rocky and barren, dirt soil. And so what he's saying is so powerful. The Lord is my shepherd. He will lead me to those little tufts of grass when I need them and where I need them. The Lord is my shepherd. There's not an abundance. There's a dependence. This is so powerful. I'm actually preaching better than you're responding, but that's okay. What David is saying is simply this. Sheep don't stress about the green grass. They know the shepherd will find it for them and lead it. They only need to follow. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. And when Jesus, who calls himself the Good Shepherd, when we place our hope into him and our trust into him, he will lead us to the right place at the right time, in the right season, for the right amount. Be a sheep. And then he writes in verse 4, even when I walk through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid, for you are close beside me. Your rod and your staff, they protect me and they comfort me. So at the beginning of service, I asked a question, how many of you, remember 1999? Or how many of you, can't be? How many of you, if you're willing to admit it, are still a little scared of the dark? Anybody? A few of us. Yes, we unite. I'm a little scared of the dark still. A couple months ago, I was walking from here on a Saturday night to the house. If you don't know where we live, you do now. We live right over there, it's uphill both ways, because it technically is, because you have to go down a hill and then back up a hill. We live right over there. It was a Saturday night, about 10:30, and I'm leaving here, and I'm going home after kind of praying through and going over the message. And I'm walking down, if you can picture kind of the back field, there's the creek. That's not a creek, it's a creek. And there's a tree line, and there's a swing set, and then a little bridge that juts up to our property. And I'm walking towards the tree line, and I hear like growling and like death in the tree line. And I'm like, oh no, it's a bear that forgot to hibernate and it's gonna eat me. These are the thoughts going through Dan's head. And I'm panicking a little bit. And so I start to pick up my pace and high step it, because I hear just this growling and this like death. And I run across the bridge to our property, and it scared the groundhog. It wasn't a bear. In my head, it was. In my head, I was planning my funeral. I was scared. You're like, you are a pathetic idiot. Yes, I am. I will admit that. I was terrified, apparently, of a groundhog. What's interesting was I was walking over here yesterday in the daylight and heard some rummaging in the tree line, and I wasn't scared because I could see. I want you to understand where I'm going with this. Darkness magnifies the micro and highlights the peripheral. The things that are small and insignificant, when you're in darkness, they feel so big. When you're walking through, like David says, I will walk through dark valleys. It's not if it's when I. And when you walk through a dark time without the hope and the light of Jesus, it will magnify the things in your life that are small and insignificant. The things that are on the peripheral that shouldn't even affect you, it will highlight that. Walking in darkness will magnify the minute things in life that should have no power over you. What David uses is what I'm going to call a metaphor, the darkness, the uncertainty. What he says is, when I walk through dark valleys, when I walk through unknowns and uncertains, when I walk through fears and worries and burdens, I choose not to be afraid, because you are close beside me, God. You protect me, you comfort, you guide, you're the shepherd, I'm the sheep. It's okay not to be okay. Because the Good Shepherd will lead you to the places that he wants you to be at. And then I'll go just peek real quick back at verse 2. It says this: he lets me rest in green meadows. He leads me beside peaceful streams. I love the beach. I'm just going to be very candid. I'm a beach person. I love standing up to the edge where the water comes in. And on a hot day, you let it hit your feet, or on a hot day, you kind of sit down, let the water just kind of come up. The waves come in, waves go out, waves come in. There's something about it that's just, it's so peaceful. Confession, I also love when people aren't aware of how big the waves are coming in, and it might kind of take them by surprise. Full confession. Came across a video where this happened, and just want to give you a disclaimer. There's a bleep in the video, because I think there's a Mexican swear word somewhere along in the video that they've bleeped out. But there's a video that I want to show you that just, to me, sums up our lives sometime. I hope you enjoy this next 45 seconds as much as I do. Everything's good. Everything's fine. And now it's not. So what I love about this video is simply this. She wasn't aware, and then she became aware, but it just kept coming. And then the person that tried to help her realized, I'm not equipped for this, because if you notice, the lifeguard turns and bolts because he doesn't want to get taken out. And then there's the white guy that comes at the very end to be the hero. What's really interesting is some of us feel like that today. Wave after wave, after wave, after wave. I start to get better, and then depression. I start to get better a little bit, and then wham, unresolved bitterness. I start to see some light, and then there's the what ifs, and there's a crash, and there's a knockback down, and then I try to get up, but man, there's so much regret and shame, and I get knocked back, and now I'm just living in this lethal dose of an absence of hope. And it's wave after wave after wave after wave. But in verse 2, David says, in the presence of Jesus, he leads us to peaceful streams. In the presence of Jesus, those relentless waves, they cease to crash. And he brings us to a place of peace. I wish I could tell you how that worked. Paul said it's a mystery. That the peace of Jesus, it transcends understanding. And if you feel the depression, the unresolved bitterness, the what ifs, the regret, the shame, just wave after wave after wave, I want to tell you, in the presence of Jesus, those relentless waves, they cease to crash, and he brings you to a place of peace. So here's how we're going to close. There are 3 mugs up here. You've seen them, and you're like, why is he not using these? Because here's how, and here's why we're going to use them. Some of us feel like we've offered Jesus every area of our lives. But all you've offered him is this, an area. But there's more to offer. And what's interesting is Jesus will fill whatever you offer him. He will fill it. And some of us have settled for the smallest. Some of us feel, but I've offered him everything. No, you haven't. You've not offered him everything. That cup of addiction, you've not offered it to him. That cup of anger, no, you've offered him a little bit, but you've not offered him all of it. Fill that cup. Because when you fill the cup of addiction, or you fill the cup of anger, or you fill the cup of regret, or you fill the cup of anger or bitterness or shame with the presence of Jesus, those relentless waves, they cease to crash. Because in the presence of Jesus, there's peace. And he will fill whatever you offer him. And some of us this morning, we've offered him nothing. I don't need your help, Jesus. I got it. And all Jesus is saying, but you be the sheep, let me be the shepherd, and whatever you offer me, I promise you I will fill it. I promise. And if you look at his track record, he's never once failed. And not trying to be rude, he ain't starting on you. You're worth too much for that. And it would go against his character. Some of us need to stop offering just little bits of ourselves and offer our whole self and let him fill every area with his presence. And when we do, the relentless waves cease to crash.